I don't want to preach too much. I just want you to take some time and listen to Miss Salome Agbaroji, a 20-year-old Nigerian activist and poet. Listen to her talk to the United Nations, unrelatedly, about the atrocities of slavery. Then you take what she discussed about slavery and relate it to the atrocities that are going on in Nigeria, not by colonialists, but by Nigerian oligarchs, if you want to call them that, starting with the atrocities that the Fulani introduced to northern Nigeria centuries ago. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, this is Fred Nwankwo coming to you from our studios in Chicago with another edition of Bold Talk on Island TV. And as usual, I like to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you, depending on where you are around the world.
Tonight I think of my home, the home where I was born. I think of my family.
Before I get into the video this morning, I just want to say that if you haven't liked the video, if you haven't subscribed to the video, if you haven't shared the video, and if you're going to forget leaving a comment at the end, why don't you do all those things even before you start watching? But if you're not doing any of those things because it's just not in your habit to do it, last time I sounded a little harsh. This time I'll be polite. There's no point watching the video. Please try to support our video. That's how we grow. And on that note, today I'm bringing you another Gen Z that's doing powerful things around the world, not just in Nigeria. The reason these young people who live outside Nigeria are so important to apply in Nigeria is that now you have this young lady and people like her across America and United Kingdom and other places. This Gen Z generation in America are the ones who, if we support, will go to the lobby and to the legislature, to Congress, to Supreme Court, if it takes that, to put pressure on the rogues that call themselves leaders in Africa. But in this case, I'm talking about Nigeria. Some of the things they can do is have the governments in the places where they live start to confiscate the properties of the rogues who come out here to invest stolen Nigeria money. Stop them from allowing these rogues to fly into their countries for medical treatment when they get sick. One of the things they may even go extreme and do is force the rogues not to be able to pay to bring their minor children to live in America and UK and enjoy good services while Nigerians suffer in Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, today I bring you Salome Agbaroji.
I now give the floor to Ms. Salome Agbaroji, Youth Poet Laureate.
Good morning, distinguished members of the General Assembly and guests. Thank you to the President of the General Assembly, His Excellency Mr. Philemon Yang, for the invitation to speak today, and to all else who helped make this possible. I am honored to join you all for the commemoration of the International Day of Remembrance of the victims of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade. As we gather today under this year's theme, acknowledge the past, repair the present, and build a future of dignity and justice, I wish not to dwell on the gruesome details of the human rights atrocity that was the transatlantic slave trade. The 15 million Africans kidnapped, commodified, and brutalized, the systemized sexual violence perpetrated towards enslaved women, and the many other hideous practices that underpinned the trade of enslaved Africans. I would much rather point out the peculiarity of these strange and bitter crimes. Europeans approached a foreign people and declared, "You're mine." To assume ownership of another human being and trade their life on coasts like measly seashells is morally detestable, sinister, but also exceptionally odd. To meet difference with disdain, then militarize it, write it into law. Organizing all social forces towards upholding this artificial hierarchy of human life is strange and deplorable. As I unpack this twisted psychology, it reveals the audacious white supremacist motivation to claim and control both the Black body and, very importantly today, the Black narrative. As the 7th National Youth Poet Laureate of the United States, I am well acquainted with the transformative power of narrative and storytelling. And as the daughter of Nigerian immigrants to the United States, I wield this power every day in my practice with the hope that my words empower and uplift marginalized narratives, revering writers like Professor Wole Soyinka for being true champions of the African narrative. But what does weaving a true Black narrative look like for me? It is viewing African art in European museums. It is delivering this address about Black and African liberation in my colonizer's tongue. It is reading African history accounts written by white explorers that paint my people as uncivilized barbarians. And even when we do have accurate histories, we refuse to disseminate them. Our books are banned, our voices are silenced. We sit willfully in the ignorance that empowers and perpetuates these systems. Today, we find ourselves in the middle passage of the path towards racial justice, the hazy and turbulent space in the journey between hell and home, where the majority of our suffering is hidden in the lower decks of our societies. The state-sponsored systems of institutional racism, like segregation, gentrification, and housing discrimination all over the world insidiously contribute to racial disparities. Even discrimination in the labor force thwarts Black progress, deeming us unqualified by the color of our skin before we even step through the door. So much so that assuming the incompetence of Black workers is called common sense. Where is home if everywhere we exist, whether taken there forcefully or by arriving from the merit of our own hard work, we are told we don't belong? In these troubled waters, we are waiting and waiting for a change. And as we repair our present, I urge us to nurture a global community in which Afro-descendants can look in the mirror and say, "You're mine." Turn the tide, flip the phrase to reclaim our personhood and our narratives. To African nations and Afro-diasporic communities, I say today that your value goes far beyond the human labor you provide, but lies in the vibrancy of your culture and innovations. You are not precious for your medals, but for your resilience, and simply your humanity. Our futures are as bright as the smiles we manage in the face of adversity. And I must also speak to the member states who have not yet formally acknowledged the part their nations have played in the transatlantic slave trade. I say, in our history, your nations have acknowledged my people enough for us to be the recipient of your whip. But in our future, acknowledge us enough to be the recipient of your remorse. In history, your nations have been economical enough to assign dollar values to human life. Today, and in our future, use this same economical prowess to assign dollar values to your ethical debt. I echo the Secretary General in saying that we need reparatory justice systems to move forward as a global community. This means supporting and sponsoring educational programs that tell the full and true African history. This means returning stolen goods to their rightful owners. This means putting our money where our morals are. We say we want a future of dignity and justice. An actioned acknowledgement would not bestow the Black diaspora with dignity, for that could never be taken from us. The necessary work of reparatory justice is the way these nations regain their own. I appreciate the few nations who have begun this work, but know that this is only just the beginning. Before we leave this chamber today, I urge you all to reflect upon your own nations, asking, what has your nation done to rebalance the scales of justice? What more can be done to bring the ship from hell finally back to home? And realize that this future we call good is well within our collective reach. Thank you.
I thank Ms. Agbaroji.
I'm sure many of you may ask, why did I pick this young lady today? I picked her because the questions she was asking at the United Nations seemed so relevant. If you just remove colonial masters from what she was saying and make those atrocities the same one that we see in Nigeria today. I brought this for us all to acknowledge the past of Nigeria, repair the present, urge the leaders, challenge them to repair the present, and build a future for all Nigerians, a future of dignity and justice. It's time to ask our own nation, Nigeria, what has Nigeria done to rebalance the scales of justice? These are questions people who are close to Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Nyesom Wike and Akpabio and all their cohorts that gang up to propel that nation into abyss. These are questions we need to be asking every one of. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, this is Fred Nwankwo coming to you from our studios in Chicago with another edition of Bold Talk on Island TV. And until next time, good night and God bless.
Tonight I think of my home, the home where I was born. I think of my family and the poor farmhouse we had. There in my home, we had no sophistication. We had no timepiece, the cockcrow and the sun, all we had. Rise early at sunup, we'd go to the farms, drive the monkeys away from the maize farms, and the birds away from the rice farms. Come back home at sundown, sometimes a little later.